Okay, sir. So just before we begin here, I just want to let you know that we are being audio or video recorded right now because there's a camera just up in the corner, and this device up here is a microphone, so it's picking up everything that we say, okay?
Okay.
The time right now is 10:17 p.m. And today's date is Monday, June the 20th, 2016. My name is Detective Paul Gauthier, G-A-U-T-H-I-E-R, badge number 5371 of 32 Division. My partner here is...
Constable Dining, 10055, 32 Division.
Okay, sir, and your name is?
Bruce McArthur.
And if you could spell it for me, please.
B-R-U-C-E, and McArthur, M, small c, capital A-R-T-H-U-R.
Okay, sir. And right now, you're under arrest. You were placed under arrest this evening for the offense of assault, okay? You've been brought here to 32 Division for the purposes of being investigated for that offense, okay?
Right.
So a few minutes ago, we just had a brief conversation. I introduced myself, and I gave you an opportunity to provide a statement, and you said that you wanted to do so. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And at the same time, I also asked you if you wanted to speak to a lawyer before doing so. I'm going to ask you again, do you wish to do that before we begin?
No, it's fine.
Okay, sir. So an allegation has been made against you, and this officer in just a moment is going to let you know exactly what that allegation is, okay? What I'm going to do to you right now is just read you a caution and let you know that you're being investigated for the offense of assault, okay? You're not obliged to say anything unless you wish to do so, but whatever you say may be given in evidence. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay. Do you wish to say anything in answer to the charge?
Mm-hmm.
Again, do you wish to provide us a statement
Yes.
with some clarity as to
Yes.
what happened? Okay. So just understand, sir, again, you're not under any obligation to give us the statement whatsoever. You're allowed to cease communicating with us at any time, but we're certainly giving you an opportunity to present your side of the story. So this officer is just going to give you an overview here of what's being alleged, okay?
So the allegations are that around 6:30 p.m. this evening, you met up with a gentleman by the name of at the intersection of Bathurst and Finch. During the course of your involvement with him, there was an allegation made of an assault, which choking was the allegation made, and that's basically why you're under arrest today, for that assault.
Okay.
Okay.
So, sir, if you would like to provide us with your account of what occurred earlier this evening.
Well, we talked about going for dinner, and he said he needed to take a shower, so I said I'd meet him at the Tim Hortons at Finch and Bathurst. And so he arrived, and we were going to have sex, and he suggested doing in the back of his truck since it hadn't been used yet. It was a brand new truck. I said, well, there's more room in the back of my van. So we went to my van. And we started kissing, and I put my hand down his pants, and he wanted me to squeeze his penis, but then he said he wanted harder, to pinch it, to pinch and pinch and pinch as hard as I could. So I did. And he got aroused by that. And so then I thought, okay, he likes it rough, so I put my hand to his throat, and just for a few seconds, because before that he's very strong, he just completely turned around and grabbed me by the throat. He said, now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to you. And he had me by the throat to the point that I couldn't breathe, so I put my hands like up in the air, like surrender, because I couldn't talk, and that's when he finally let go. And then he jumped out of the car. He said, I don't want to see you again. So I sat there because I was kind of out of breath, and I thought he was getting in his car to leave, because he started the car and it was running. I could hear it running because he was parked right beside me. And the next thing I heard him say, it's 911 or whatever. And so I thought, oh gosh, he's calling the cops. And so I got out, and then he got out and walked around and was taking my license plates and that. And so that's when I got kind of uptight, and got in the car and I drove off. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, I should go and give my side of it, but I could not feel like where a police station was in that area. So the only one I could think of was downtown, but then I realized there's one somewhere in Eglinton, and that's where I drove to.
Just on the last point, sir, did you go to that police station on Eglinton before the officers contacted you?
Yeah, no, I went there, and then they came there to me.
Okay.
The lady that spoke to I told her I came to make a statement, and she said she ran my name, and she said, there's nothing coming up on the screen. I said, well, what about my license plate? And she said it would show up too.
Okay.
So that's when she called.
So you went on your own free will. It's not like an officer called you to come to the
No,
station.
no one called me.
Excuse me, anything like that.
No.
Okay. So you indicated that this incident occurred with. What's his last name?
I don't know his last name.
Okay. And how long have you known him for?
2 or 3 years, maybe.
Okay. And as you're describing it, this is somebody that you're in an intimate relationship with. Is that right?
Well, intimate. I see him every 2 or 3 months, maybe.
Okay. And how did the two of you meet?
Online, I think.
Online?
I think online.
Okay. Has anything like this ever happened before, where things got out of hand?
Not like that. No, not that quickly. Or not. Just like that.
Okay. Things have never gotten violent.
No.
No. Okay. So you indicated that I think it was around 6:30 p.m. You said.
Yeah, between 6:30 and 7.
Okay. And you said you
I
met
think-
at the.
Yeah, something like that. I think would be 6:30 and 7.
Yeah. Okay. And you said you met at the Tim Hortons parking lot at Bathurst and Finch. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it still would have been bright outside at 6:30, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you indicated that you were going to have sex in his truck, but it was new.
He suggested that, and I said, well, there's more room in the back of my van than there is your truck.
Okay. What kind of truck did he have?
Ford, a Ford something, 4-door.
Okay. And your van is
It's a Dodge Caravan.
Dodge Caravan? Okay. And you said that the two of you were parked beside each other, right?
Yeah.
And then you went into your van, is that right? And then you said you started kissing,
Yeah.
and that's when this incident basically happened, is that right?
Well, then my hand went down his pants, and he said, squeeze, pinch it as hard as you can.
Okay. What part of the van were you in when this happened?
That seat.
Back seat? Like the back seat or like the very back of?
Well, there's only one seat. Actually, the seats are all except for one seat, one bucket seat in there.
Okay.
So there's quite a bit of room.
Okay. And was there a possibility for anybody else to see what had gone on?
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Well, because you're lying on the floor, who could see you?
Oh, so you were down some.
Yeah, lying flat on the floor.
Okay. And you indicated that you started to pinch his penis, and he indicated that he wanted it rougher, I believe.
He said
was.
hard, as hard as you can do it. Yeah.
Okay. And at that point, you said that you motioned your hands up to his neck.
Well, after, we did that for a while until he was getting harder and harder.
Okay.
Okay, so I figured he obviously liked that.
Okay. And what was your reason for bringing your hands up to his neck? What was your understanding?
I thought he liked it rough.
Okay.
He was getting off on that.
And then you indicated that immediately he then put his hands around your neck, is that right?
He was like, he's very strong, and before you know it, he just had completely swung around and was facing me on pushing me down, and his hands were around my neck,
Okay.
like really quick.
So there's a brief struggle.
Yeah, well, I couldn't struggle with him after once he had his hands around my neck. He was very strong.
Okay. How long did this last for, approximately?
Seconds.
Are you injured at all, sir?
No,
Do you believe he would have been injured?
I didn't think so.
Lacey, did you have any questions?
No, it's pretty good.
Okay, sir. Just before we conclude, is there anything else you feel might be important to tell us before we end the interview?
Like what? I don't know what else it would be to...
Just, we always give people an opportunity to say something that maybe we haven't asked before we conclude.
I don't know, we had sex, numerous times. I never had a problem.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Time that I have is 10:28. Conclude the interview here.
Early on January 18th, 2018, and the eyes of the Toronto police were trained on a high-rise building in the neighborhood known as Thorncliffe Park. That had the occupant of a 19th floor apartment under surveillance, reportedly ordered to watch him 24 hours a day, unless their target was alone with someone else. Then they were to move in immediately. That Thursday morning, it's exactly what happened. When police saw their suspect enter his unit with an unidentified male, officers forced their way inside. They found a young man bound to the bed, but unharmed. They arrested the resident of the apartment. His name, Bruce McArthur.
This morning at approximately 10:25 a.m., police arrested 66-year-old Bruce McArthur.
Lead homicide investigator Hank Idzinga went public with the news.
He has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder.
But it was clear from the outset that this would be no ordinary murder case.
We believe he is responsible for the deaths of other men who have yet to be identified. In other words, we believe there are other victims.
Indeed, since his arrest, the number of first-degree homicide charges against Bruce McArthur has risen to half a dozen, if true, already in the hierarchy of Canadian serial killers.
We've never had anything like it. I've had people in the past where I've charged them with multiple murders. Nothing quite like this. I don't think the City of Toronto has ever seen anything quite like this.
It's what many in Toronto's gay village had feared and whispered about for years. Canada's largest LGBTQ community has long been rife with rumors of missing persons and mysterious deaths. Crimes unsolved, some believed, because of bad blood with the police. The names of McArthur's alleged victims are only a partial roll of those who have vanished from the village. Salim Essen and Andrew Kinsman in 2017. Dean Lisowick in 2016. Saroush Mahmoudi in 2015. Majid Kayan in 2012. Skanda Navaratnam in 2010. In the gay village in downtown Toronto, the disappearances took place over the better part of a decade, perhaps far longer. The earliest victim that Bruce McArthur is now charged with killing went missing here in 2010. Others would vanish over the next several years: 2012, 2015, 2016, 2017. So how did it happen? The man with the seemingly friendly face, literally a mall Santa at Christmas time. How did he become the monster it's alleged that Bruce McArthur is? And how could he keep his terrible secret for so long? Bruce McArthur grew up in southern Ontario in a farming community, the little hamlet of Woodville. In his 1970 high school graduation photo in Fenelon Falls, he was a clean-cut young man about to embark on a mainstream path. Soon, he'd marry his girlfriend Janice, and they'd have 2 children, a boy and a girl. Eventually, they'd buy a house in Oshawa, where he would join the executive of their church. And in the mid-1970s, he got a job at Eaton's in downtown Toronto, working at the store's warehouse adjacent to Yonge Street, not far from the city's gay strip then. The first of the unsolved gay murders nearby happened at about the same time, in 1975. University of Toronto lecturer Harold Walkley found naked, stabbed front and back.
His nude body was found in the blood-spattered bathroom of this building on Borden Street.
And in the years to come, from 1975 to 78, many more gay men would be murdered in the area, all in similar fashion, bound, beaten, and brutally killed, either stabbed, strangled, or both.
With this 13th murder involving a homosexual in the past 3 years. So far, no arrests have been made.
Civil servant James Kennedy was strangled with a bath towel.
Kennedy's nude body was found the following day.
Discotheque manager Sandy LeBlanc was stabbed over 100 times.
They discovered bloody footprints in the hallway of the apartment, leading to a window facing on an alley.
TD Bank analyst Brian Lataki had relocated from Winnipeg, also new to the gay life, which he kept from his family, according to his cousin Nancy.
We didn't know that Brian was gay or part of a gay community. That was news to all of us.
24-year-old Brian Lataki was found tied to his bed. His head.
But the fact that he had been strangled and stabbed, it was just incomprehensible. And it was just very, very hard to believe that that had happened to him and why someone would do that to him, to the person that I knew, my cousin, the person that I loved.
Meanwhile, Bruce McArthur had got a new job, one which took him out on the road as a traveling salesman. His life otherwise occupied by family and faith, according to friend Pamela Bennett.
Raising 2 children, being married, and being involved in the church. He always seemed to be doing something for the church.
By all accounts, he was a generous guy, hosting Christmas lunches for colleagues, giving them the miniature ceramic houses he liked to collect. But they say increasingly, he seemed unhappy at home.
So when he divorced Jan and came out, it wasn't really a terribly big surprise.
Indeed, in the late 1990s, a lot was about to change. The marriage breakup, coming out of the closet, bankruptcy. Approaching his 50th birthday, he was living in Toronto, a regular at bars and restaurants along the main artery of the gay village, Church Street. Then, in 2001, a glimpse of another side of McArthur, when he was arrested for assaulting a male sex worker with a metal pipe, given a conditional sentence and banned from the gay village, a hint of things to come. According to the recent murder charges against him, by 2010, well into his 6th decade, Bruce McArthur's career as a serial sexual killer was allegedly just getting underway. And the last of the 6 killings he's accused of took place in 2017, when he was almost 66 years old. It's what's so strange about this case, says veteran forensic psychiatrist John Bradford.
You know, I go through from the science and sort of research study standpoint, and the first thing that hit me is he's old, and this doesn't make sense.
And there's scientific data to back that up.
So what is the name of the data bank, the website?
Murder Accountability Project. Murderdata.org is the URL.
Mike Arnfield was a police officer and detective for 15 years, then earned his PhD in criminology. He now teaches at Western University and administers the definitive database for American homicides.
How many homicides are in this database?
Almost 800,000 going back to 1965. Case-specific details including motive and weapon and victim age going back to 1976, so over 40 years. Here's the murder curve, as we call it. We see that by far the dominant age is 31 for that type of offender, and that in the last 40 years, There are only 3 killers in all of the United States who have been 66 and used that method.
In other words, of 800,000 U.S. murders, among killers who did what Bruce McArthur is accused of, only 3 were as old as he is. So was McArthur just a late starter, virtually unheard of in the field? Or in his late 20s and early 30s, the formative years for the typical serial sexual killer, did he give in to homicidal urges, yet somehow manage to stay under the radar?
He's clearly a serial sexually motivated homicide perpetrator. That's the first thing. We do know he's had people in vulnerable situations where there was bondage and some attempted choking. But the little bits we do know seem to give us this kind of profile of bondage, torture, choking, and death.
Police then had composite sketches of people last seen with 2 of the 70s victims. Neither resembled Bruce McArthur. No one was ever charged. But lead investigator Hank Idzinga says McArthur is also a person of interest today for what happened 40 years ago.
Go back to Bruce McArthur's late 20s. You're back in the 1970s, and there are a number of killings in the gay community in Toronto in that time frame, several of which remain unresolved.
Right.
Definitively, would you look at those?
We are looking at those. We have pulled the cases from the 1970s that you're talking about, and we're going through those with a fine-tooth comb to see if there's any links at all.
Yeah.
Would it surprise me if Mr. McArthur was linked to some murders from his late 20s? It wouldn't. Would it surprise me if his first murder was in 2010? That wouldn't either.
Detective turned criminologist Mike Arnfield believes McArthur's alleged crimes are statistically so extraordinary that a link to the 70s killings is quite possible.
Again, what we're dealing with here is so outside the norm, so beyond what we've seen in the literature or even in Canadian history, quite frankly, that I don't think anyone was prepared to admit what we're now seeing, not back then.
Toronto investigators are now piecing together Bruce McArthur's movements 40 years ago, when he worked in downtown Toronto at the same time as the unsolved gay killings. Police say they have enough evidence already to put McArthur behind bars for the rest of his life. But Detective Sergeant Idzinga believes they owe it to the victims' families to try to track down the killers, even decades later. He knows it will take police work and luck and a lot of both.
If you look at a homicide case from present day, the bulk of our work is surveillance videos, cellular phones, things that just didn't exist back in the 70s. So back in the 70s, they're relying heavily on witness statements, and if they don't have any witnesses, they don't have any witnesses. They can't manufacture the evidence. So you have the evidence that's preserved from the scene, and hopefully it's still intact, and we can do something with that in the modern day.
Yeah. Can DNA survive over that period of time?
Yes, it can.
Fingerprints?
Fingerprints can survive, DNA can survive.
Many questions remain unanswered about Bruce McArthur. But for historian Tom Hooper, the hope of solving this murder case after so long may be outweighed by a sense of dread. Given all the awful things we've learned, Hooper says he's now not certain that he really wants to know the answers.
He could have been part of what happened then. I don't want to think about that because it makes me sick. It makes me wonder, what about the 80s and 90s and 2000s? And how many people did he come across through that time period?
Bruce McArthur has not entered a plea to the charges of first-degree homicide he's now facing. A cloud that hangs over Toronto's gay village, even after 40 years.